The trouble started the moment Clara stepped off the train with a wedding dress in her trunk and a 2-line letter in her pocket. Some stories begin with hope. Hers began with a lie. Can't go through with it. You'll understand someday. 2 lines. 2 days on a train. 2 months of planning a life that no longer existed. The platform emptied quickly as families reunited and wagons rolled away. Soon, she was the only one still standing there, her carpet bag heavy against her arm, her throat dry from hunger and humiliation. She should have eaten yesterday in Kansas City, but the stale bread had sat like a stone in her stomach. She hadn't had a drop of water since the train. That was the moment the first man stepped toward her. Big Jack McGrew blocked the boarding house steps like a bull guarding a gate. His beard was stained yellow at the mustache, whiskey fumes drifting off him like heat waves. "You're that girl," he said, "waiting for someone. Or were." His eyes roamed her collar, her dress, her face. "Eastern schooling, I'd wager. I could use a girl like you at the Silver Dollar. Pour drinks upstairs for the poker games. Real gentle-like. $2 a night." Clara shifted her carpet bag. The leather handle had carved a groove into her palm during the long journey, and now it throbbed like her heartbeat. "No, thank you," she said. Jack stepped closer, breath sour and hot. "Your man ain't coming, honey. Might as well figure that out now." Clara ducked under his arm, boots hitting the dirt hard enough to make her teeth jar. His laugh followed her like gravel in a bucket. It lingered long after she had put a full street between them. But the day wasn't done breaking her. Behind the hotel, Mrs. Alley stirred laundry in a steaming copper tub, her hands raw and bleeding. 50 cents a day, she said, pushing heavy sheets under water. Clara watched those ruined hands and walked away. Not because she was above the work, but because her insides twisted at the thought of becoming those hands. At the Fletcher mansion, a rich woman with a cameo brooch the size of a silver dollar looked Clara up and down. "My husband is very appreciative of a smooth household," she said, in a tone that made Clara stand before she even realized she'd pushed her chair back. She was out the door before Mrs. Fletcher could finish her meaning. 3 offers, 3 refusals. And now she sat on a bench outside the dry goods store, counting the last of her coins. 38 cents, enough for maybe 2 more nights, and nothing more. Across the street, a man leaned against a post, watching her. He had been there when she fled the saloon, there when she left the laundry shed, there when she walked out of Fletcher's house with her dignity cracking like thin glass. Now he crossed the street. Clara's fingers tightened around her carpet bag. Surgical scissors lay inside her satchel, 6 inches of Sheffield steel. If Big Jack returned, she was ready. But it wasn't Jack. The man who stopped in front of her looked about 40. His denim shirt was faded, and sweat darkened under the arms. His hat had a salt ring around the crown. When he took it off, his hair stuck up on one side like he'd slept rough for years. He twisted the brim in his hands nervously. "Ma'am," he said, voice low and rough, like he didn't use it much. "Weren't trying to worry you. I just... been watching you all afternoon." Clara stiffened. "I noticed you turned down 3 jobs. You were counting?" she asked. "Hard not to. A woman walks out of 3 places looking like she'd rather starve than stay. A man notices." Her stomach cramped. Hunger, nerves, shame. They were all the same now. He shifted his weight. The movement pulled his sleeve back, revealing a thick, ropey scar running from wrist to elbow. Old, healed, but impossible to ignore. "What kind of work are you looking for?" he asked. Clara swallowed. Heat gathered behind her eyes. She was too tired to lie. "I'm a nurse," she said. "Trained at Pennsylvania Hospital for 3 years. I came west to marry, but She stopped, breathed. I'm good at what I do. I just don't want to pour drinks for drunks or let men buy more than labor. The man's eyes softened. You afraid of hard work? He asked. No. You mind isolation? 2 hours from town, no neighbors close by? No. You squeamish? Clara opened her satchel. The lamplight caught on forceps, scalpels, rolled bandages, her mother's obstetric tools, everything that still tied her to the life she had built before it shattered. I've assisted in amputations, she said calmly. Delivered breech babies, held intestines in place while a surgeon sutured, drained abscesses, set compound fractures. No, I'm not squeamish. For the first time, the man almost smiled. Name's Jacob Cole, he said. I got a ranch north of here. 3 men hurt bad in a rock slide. Doctor in town won't come for the price I can pay. He looked at her then, not like Big Jack had, not like Mrs. Fletcher had, but like someone seeing the exact thing he needed at the exact moment he needed it. They stayed with me when my wife was sick, Jacob said quietly. Worked for promises instead of wages. Buried her with me when the doc said nothing could be done. I ain't letting them die because they're poor. Clara felt the air shift, felt something inside her shift with it. The prairie wind swept through the street. Dust rolled over Clara's boots. She closed her satchel, stood, and held it at her side. I need to see them before I decide, she said. Jacob nodded once. Fair enough. I'll get the wagon. And as he walked toward the livery, Clara realized she was stepping into a life she had never planned, but maybe, just maybe, the one she was meant for. The wagon rattled north out of Prospect, carrying Clara, her carpet bag, her medical satchel, and whatever hope she still had left. The town shrank behind them until it was only dust and memory. Ahead stretched miles of open prairie, grass gold in the fading light, and mountains rising purple in the distance. Jacob didn't talk much. He just guided the reins with steady hands, eyes on the horizon, jaw working like he carried more weight inside than he ever showed outside. Clara watched him in the corner of her vision. He moved with a stiffness that told its own story. A healed injury. A life lived through hardship. And yet he carried himself like a man who refused to bend. By the time they reached the ranch, the sun had dropped low, turning the sky copper and rose. The house sat small against the wide world, unpainted clapboard, shutters hanging loose, a barn with a patched roof, a chicken coop listing sideways, a garden struggling in the dry soil. It was rough, tired, weather-beaten, but it was alive. Jacob helped her down without a word. The bunkhouse sat behind the barn, a dim square of logs and shadows. As Clara approached, a smell hit her. Sweat, sickness, leather, and something underneath, sharp and sour. Inside, 3 injured men lay on rope beds. Miguel, ribs broken. Tommy, leg wound gone bad. Red streaks climbing upward. Pete, shoulder dislocated for 6 days, swollen and black. Clara's training rose inside her like a second heartbeat. Her exhaustion disappeared. Her anger at Thomas disappeared. Her fear disappeared. There were only patience. Bring boiling water, she said. Clean cloths, lamps, whiskey, soap, everything cotton. Jacob didn't argue. He ran. Clara rolled up her sleeves and started with Tommy. She peeled away the filthy dressing. When skin tore with it, he screamed, body arching, then collapsed unconscious. The wound festered with pus. The red streaks, blood poisoning. 1, maybe 2 days to live. Clara worked fast. Carbolic acid, boiled water, forceps pulling away dead tissue, packing the wound with clean gauze, raising the leg to slow the spread. Miguel watched her with wide eyes. "You're good," he whispered through shallow breaths. "I am," Clara answered, not as pride, but as promise. She bound his ribs next, easing pressure so he could breathe again. Then, "Pete, don't need a woman poking at me," he grumbled. Clara didn't blink. "If I don't, you'll lose that arm." Jacob pinned Pete's torso while Clara pulled, rotated, pushed. Pete screamed a sound so deep it rattled the stovepipe. Then, pop. The joint slid back where it belonged. Pete collapsed in relief. Hours passed. The lamps burned low. Clara's hands trembled only when she finally allowed herself to stop. Jacob returned to the doorway, eyes searching her face. "They gonna make it?" he asked quietly. "Ask me in 10 days, she said. But inside, she hoped. Before dawn, Clara crossed the yard to check her patients again. The cold air stung her skin, waking her fully. Inside the bunkhouse, the change was undeniable. Tommy slept without fever. Miguel breathed deeper. Pete glared at her, which meant he was healing. "You any good?" he muttered. "You're alive, aren't you?" she said. When she stepped back into the morning light, something eased in her chest. Maybe this wasn't a mistake. Maybe she hadn't come west to fall apart. Maybe she had come west to begin again. Jacob was in the kitchen when she entered the house, stirring mush and frying bacon. The smell filled the room. Clara realized she hadn't eaten properly in days. He set a plate in front of her without a word. For the first time since stepping off that train, Clara felt something like steadiness return. "You did good last night," Jacob said. "They aren't safe yet," she replied. "But they will be." His voice held a quiet certainty that warmed more than the coffee. Every sunrise, Clara checked wounds, mixed medicine, cleaned bandages. Every afternoon, she worked the garden, fed chickens, hauled water. Every evening, she and Jacob sat on the west-facing bench drinking coffee while the sky went purple and gold. They didn't talk much at first, but then they did. Jacob told her about his wife, Sarah, who died of fever because help came too late. Clara told him about the young mother she lost as a student nurse because she'd recognized the bleeding too late. Two people carrying guilt heavy enough to crush them if they let it. Two people learning not to shoulder it alone. Small kindnesses appeared. A jar of wildflowers outside Clara's room. Her door hinge suddenly no longer squeaked. An extra pile of firewood by the stove. She didn't ask. He didn't explain. But she knew. A wagon thundered into the yard at dusk, a woman shouting Clara's name. In the back sat a little girl clutching her burned hand, lips pale, shaking. Clara moved faster than thought. Cool water, honey salve, clean cloths, gentle voice, steady hands. By the end, Emma could breathe again, her mother sobbing into Clara's shoulder. "You should stay," Mrs. Yates said. "There are more like us, folks who need help." That night, Clara sat beside Jacob on the bench and whispered the question out loud. What if I stayed and we built a real clinic, a place people can count on? Jacob didn't hesitate. "Make a list," he said. "I'll get whatever you need." And for the first time since she left Philadelphia, Clara felt her heart pull towards something that wasn't fear, something that wasn't regret, something that felt like a future. The next morning, the plan for the clinic took on real shape. Clara sketched rooms on scrap wrapping paper, while Jacob added measurements beside her handwriting. They leaned close over the table, heads nearly touching. Two wounded people building something healing out of nothing but lumber, grit, and belief. For a few weeks, everything felt possible. Miguel and Tommy recovered enough to help with work. Pete, loud, stubborn, and opinionated, supervised from the ground with his good arm, barking instructions like a general. Neighbors brought nails, lumber, canning jars, cloth, and food. Women painted the inside walls with whitewash. Men hammered rafters into place. Children ran in and out carrying scraps and laughing. Piece by piece, board by board, the clinic rose from the hard earth. For the first time in Clara's life, she felt truly needed. But the prairie does not allow anything to grow without testing it first. Late October brought a strange light, greenish, heavy, a warning from the sky. Jacob stood at the kitchen window before dawn. "Big storm coming," he said. They worked fast, running from barn to house to coop as wind built into a scream. Rain hit sideways, stinging their skin like cold needles. Clara barely made it to the barn as the storm broke open like a giant hand tearing at the world. Water poured through the unfinished roof of the clinic. Shelves collapsed. Bandages floated like drowned ghosts. Medicine bottles rolled and shattered. The examination table cracked under the weight of pooled water. Clara grabbed whatever she could, forceps, scalpels, laudanum, and clutched them to her chest as Jacob dragged her back into the storm. When they reached the house, both soaked and shaking, Clara set the few saved tools on the kitchen table. It wasn't enough. It felt like losing everything all over again. The storm screamed through the night. By morning, the world was mud and ruin. Clara walked into the destroyed clinic and sank to her knees in muddy water. The soaked supplies fell apart in her hands. The walls leaned. Splintered boards littered the ground. A year ago, she had stepped off a train with her life already shattered. Now she had built something of her own and watched it drown. She didn't cry. She simply went quiet, too hurt to make a sound. She retreated to her room and sat on the rope bed in her ruined skirt, mud drying on her hands, jaw clenched tight enough to ache. A soft knock came. "Clara," Jacob said. "Can I come in?" She didn't answer, but he opened the door anyway and sat beside her while the ropes creaked beneath his weight. He spoke softly. "Sarah died because I waited too long. Thought she'd tough it out. By the time I got her to town, she was already gone." He paused, looking at the floor. "I learned that giving up is worse than any storm." Clara stared at her mud-caked hands. "I worked so hard. We had everything ready, and it's all gone." "Then we build it again," Jacob said simply. "With what?" "Neighbors, friends, the people you've helped, and me. Always me." His voice broke softly at the edges. "Don't quit, Clara. Not after everything you've done. Not after everything we're building." Something in her chest loosened, a knot tied with fear, pride, and exhaustion. She breathed, then nodded. "Fine," she whispered. "But this time, we do it better." And Jacob smiled the smallest smile, which meant everything. The next morning, the yard filled with wagons. The Yates family brought lumber from an old shed. The Krugers brought paintbrushes and whitewash. The Martinez family brought shingles and strong backs. Mrs. Yates brought eggs, preserves, and half her pantry. Doc Morrison's widow sent the old examination table. Children hauled scrap wood. Men hammered beams. Women washed salvaged bandages. Jacob sold cattle to buy more lumber. The clinic rose again, this time with a steeper roof, solid beams, thicker shelves, and a stove for winter sterilizing. The walls gleamed bright white. The shelves filled slowly with supplies. Some bought, many traded. Neighbors donated jars, herbs, cloth, and anything they could spare. By the end of 3 weeks, the place felt like a miracle. On reopening day, a young father arrived carrying his son with a broken arm. Clara set it clean and straight. He paid with a ham. Then came a difficult birth. A fevered child. A ranch hand sliced by barbed wire. A man with a rotten tooth. A fever that needed careful watching. Clara treated them all. The clinic lived. The ranch lived. The community lived. And Jacob watched her with something warmer than hope. One cold October night, they sat on their bench facing the mountains. The stars sparkled hard and bright above the prairie. Jacob brought her coffee like always, but tonight his hand trembled slightly when he passed the mug. "You know I'm falling in love with you," he said. Clara froze, not from fear, from truth. "I am too," she said simply. Their hands met between them, fingers interlacing, rough and soft, warm and steady. No grand promises, no rushed passion, just two people choosing each other in the quiet. Nearly a year later, before sunrise, Jacob woke her gently. "I need to show you something." They rode up to the ridge above the ranch. Sunrise painted the valley gold as he twisted his hat in his hands. "I'm not good with words," he said, "but I love you, Clara. Will you marry me?" Sunlight spilled over everything. Clinic, barn, house, prairie, and the life they had built from stubbornness and second chances. "Yes," Clara said, "I'll marry you." He didn't cheer. He didn't sweep her off her feet. He pulled her close, careful, gentle, full of quiet devotion. They married inside the clinic they'd built together. The people she'd healed filled the room shoulder to shoulder. Someone brought a fiddle. Children danced around them. Mrs. Yates gifted Clara a quilt made from scraps of patients' clothing. Jacob kissed her softly, public, but full of promise for a life they would share. That night, wrapped in clean sheets smelling of sun and lye soap, Clara listened to Jacob's heart beating steady beneath her ear and knew she had chosen right. Not safety, not comfort, but purpose and love. At dawn, a wagon approached fast across the prairie. Jacob kissed her forehead. "Should we get dressed?" she asked. "In a minute," he whispered. "Let me have this 1 minute." They stood watching sunlight sweep across the land, gold and endless, before Clara dressed, grabbed her medical satchel, and hurried toward the next family who needed her. Jacob watched from the window, pride softening his tired eyes. This was their life. Hard, beautiful, shared. And Clara ran toward it with a full heart, ready for whatever came next.